Thank you. Thank you. So just wanted to let you know that we are recording this today. So if for any reason you prefer not to have your face on our recording, just put your little cross on your video there. And while we're doing this session, it'd be great if you could just keep your microphone off, and we'll have opportunities at the end as well to ask some questions. Okay, all good? So good afternoon, everybody. My name's Diane Percy, and I'm from the Council on the Ageing, COTA ACT, and we're based in Canberra on beautiful Ngunnawal country. Please let us know where you're joining us from, and I think we have quite a few local people, so maybe which suburb you're from. If you're outside of the Canberra region, let us know. And I'd like to welcome you to the first of a two-part series, Spring Clean Your Way to Better Health. Our speakers today are myself, Robin Smith from the Heart Foundation, and Janine Lorenz from Asthma Australia. So importantly, before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, and I would like to pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to people of First Nations who are with us today. So just a bit of housekeeping. As I mentioned, we'll be recording the sessions, so feel free to turn off your video if you do not wish to be recorded. And I'd also like to ask you to just double check and make sure that your microphone is off. And if you have any questions or comments during the session, please put them in the chat box, and we will have time in the last 10 minutes of today's session to respond as best we can to the questions that you may have. So if you could go to the next slide for me, Robin. So the topics that we're covering today is physical activity, and that'll be my little bit at the beginning. So we're going to talk about the key activities that are beneficial as we age. Heart health and reducing the risk of heart disease, that'll be Robin's section, and she'll be talking straight after me. Asthma spring essentials and how to manage exercise-induced asthma, and Janine will be presenting that topic. And just to let you know as well, I do work with Janine at Asthma Australia as well as COTA, so I'm really excited that the two of us get to do a little gig together. And Robin and Janine and I have already presented a face-to-face session a couple of years ago now on busting the myths of asthma, heart disease and exercise. So, and then we're also going to be weaving in what are the opportunities for staying active and socially connected for better mental health during COVID, but also we're coming out of this lockdown and working out what are our strategies to become more active. We've seen that has been an issue for a lot of people, is lower physical activity levels, but also poorer mental health because of this tough time we've just been through. So we asked you a few questions when you signed up for the session today. And let's just have a look at a few things that you told us. So how confident were you, how confident do you feel about your ability to safely manage your own well-being? The positive was that the majority of people said that they were very confident, which is a great sign. We had the same number of people saying they could use some help, and they were somewhat confident about managing their own well-being. So hopefully from today, we'll be able to give you some information, some direction as to where to from here to increase your confidence about maintaining your own well-being. And the other question was, what aspects do you struggle with? And it was interesting because a lot of these responses were around our physical well-being. So balance and strength, and there's definitely things that I'll be talking about in my presentation. Getting up off the floor is very closely tied to, you know, our body strength. So we'll be looking at that as well. Weights and stretches, walking and standing for long periods of time. And that all ties also into the our body strength and endurance. Motivation, hopefully today will motivate a few people to get out and be a bit more active and know where to go and what to do. Walking up hills, and that is really about our lower body strength, isn't it, and our cardiovascular endurance. Injuries, which is important because that can slow us down, and all our good intentions can go out the window if we are injured. And also, how do we make exercise a regular part of our daily activities? Some of the barriers, safety, cyclists and bike paths. So I imagine that's people who are walking and maybe not feeling as safe because of either the paths themselves not being well paved. I know around my area there's a lot of cracks in the paths, and it's even difficult as a cyclist to stay on the path sometimes because of those uneven surfaces. Time management, which I think affects everybody. So we might have a look at how do we put that into our regular day, just those little bouts of being active. Unsure about our techniques, not enough balance, motivation, and lack of fitness. So we'll go over that. And in each presentation, there'll be some really good tips there that might help you. So I'll lead into my presentation. I just thought I would start with a couple of the quotes that I've sort of brought along my journey over the years as a trainer. Two of my favourite quotes: "It is never too late and you're never too old." We know that we can get a lot of benefits out of being physically active as we age. And it's really important that we start where we are. So if we haven't exercised for a long time, is being aware and acknowledging that, using what we have, and also just doing what we can. Sometimes if we procrastinate a lot, we just don't do anything at all. So it's about just starting with something. Right, so in just another big thank you to Janine and Robin for joining me today. I think we're lucky to have three people who are really passionate about what they do. We've got a lot of great information to share with you today. I am the Active Ageing and Strength for Life Coordinator and instructor at Council on the Ageing, ACT. And in this session, I'll be giving you a bit of information about physical activity, about exercise, about strength training, and the Strength for Life program in the ACT. So please feel free to pop any questions in the chat as we go along, and we'll respond as well as we can at the end of the session. So I'll just go back a slide. There's a lovely photo there. This is me and my gang, or some of my gang at COTA. Last year, we did some Facebook Live sessions to keep people active. Everybody was challenged during that time, and also just recently by not having access to the venues, to the classes, the sports, the activities that we might have been used to doing on a regular basis. We might have moved less, changed our eating habits, have disrupted sleep and poorer mental health. Our plan today is to get you to start thinking about what you could be doing to give your health and wellness a boost, and to provide you with the information on how to connect to our programs and the services and resources to make that happen. And all of those people are still exercising with us this year. So that was 12 months ago. So that's a pretty good sign. So I get a lot of people asking me, well, what are you talking about when you talk about physical activity? What's the difference between physical activity and exercise? So I thought we'll start off with just defining what that is and move forward. So physical activity can be defined as any movement of the body that requires energy expenditure. So movement. But for example, it might be walking to work, it might be taking the stairs, it might be mowing the lawn, Cleaning your house can even be considered physical activity. And exercise is a type of physical activity, but not every physical activity is exercise. So if you look at physical activity as the umbrella, exercise sits underneath that umbrella. The difference there is that exercise is something that is planned, it's structured, it can be repetitive, and it's purposeful in the sense that it's there to improve or maintain a component of your physical fitness. So it might be activities that involve bodily movements that are done as a part of playing a sport, working in your active transportation, basically walking or cycling, household jobs, and some recreational activities. Golf is an exercise, swimming is an exercise, walking is an exercise. So for people aged 65 years and older, it's recommended that we do at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity on most or preferably all days. So about 150 minutes per week. It's not to say that you can't do those 30 minutes in sort of 2, 3, 10-minute blocks. And that's a great option for a lot of people starting out. So what is moderate intensity? It means that when you're doing that activity, you feel like it's a little bit more effort than usual, but you're able to carry on a conversation. If you're going into that higher intensity, it's very, very difficult to have a conversation. You're busy trying to breathe hard, but moderate, you can be out there having a brisk walk with a friend of yours and you're still able to have a chat. That's your moderate physical activity. And so examples are, yeah, as I said, the brisk walk, tennis, golf without the cart though, got to do that walking on the golf course, cycling, swimming, and some household and yard work is considered as moderate physical activity. If you're like my mum and you're a mad gardener, she does a lot of physical activity in her garden, moderate physical activity. The other part of it is resistance training. So that's the strength training. Then the strength training is a type of exercise where participants exercise their muscles against some type of resistance that is progressively increased as their strength improved. So you can be using your body weight. You might be going from sitting to standing and repeating that movement 12 times. That is a resistance exercise for your lower body. You might be using machines in a gym. You might use TheraBands, elastic bands, dumbbells, anything that provides that resistance. So we're doing maybe less repetitions, but it's a little bit harder to do. So I popped in a couple of slides. They're probably a tiny bit small, but what I wanted to show you, this comes from 2018. So that next slide, Robin. This is the amount of people who did not meet the physical activity guidelines. So that's that 150 minutes a day, not a day, a week. And you've got it blocked off into people aged 18 to 64 and then 65 and older for men and for women. What I want you to have a look at is when we get to that 65 and older, we start to increase the amount of inactivity. So, for example, women go from being 55% of the population are inactive to 75%, and men it's the same. So there's an increase of 20%. So you can see as we're getting older, we are slowing down as far as how much we're moving. And then on the next slide, have a look at the strength, people doing regular strength training and strength-based exercises. We should be doing them in a scheduled, maybe 30-minute, twice a week. So up until the age of 64, there's still a whole lot of people who are not doing it. And that's 75% don't reach the guidelines. Once over the age of 65, 85% of people don't. And that big blue bit, they're the people who don't do anything at all. The little green bit, they're the people who are doing it once a week. So you can see that a lot of us, as we age, we are not doing
any of those resistance type exercises. And the challenge here is that strength training, it gives us a lot of benefits. So if we're not doing it, you can see how we can lose a lot of those good benefits of strength training. So why should we strength train? So on the next slide, you'll see these are all the things that improve when we do those strength-based exercises. We're more mobile. We have better strength, upper, lower body, core. We have better balance. So obviously, you know, we've got a reduced risk of falling because we've got better balance. We have our independence. And a lot of us fear that lack of independence or having to be dependent on other people. So this is another way we can stay independent. We have a better resistance to injuries, and it's great for our mental health. We feel more confident, we're less fearful. And we also have the ability to perform just all our day-to-day tasks with with less energy. We can continue to walk, to swim, and to run. So there's so many benefits. There's not enough people doing it. So what we came up with is a program to help people become stronger, fitter, more mobile. And this program is called Strength for Life. Strength for Life is for people over the age of 50, and it's evidence-based. We have specially trained instructors. They're accredited. They are either physios, exercise physiologists, or personal trainers. The programs are individualised, so you can be very unfit starting the lower end, and you'll be in the same class as someone who is maybe training for a big bike race or whatever, but everybody's doing the exercise plan that has been designed for them in a group setting. So we have up to about 15 people in those groups. Groups are friendly, and the cost is fairly reasonable in most of the in all the locations. We have 2 tiers. So the tier 1 is delivered by exercise physiologists and physios, and it's designed more for helping people with more complex health conditions. And just to let you know, a lot of the information about these locations and more information about Strength for Life is on our COTA website, and I'll provide the link there just a little bit later on. But the locations in the ACT that are tier 1 providers are the Henry Sports Tech Clinic in Kingston, LDK in Tuggeranong, Capital Rehab Professionals in Phillip, and Higher Function Physio and Pilates in Civic. And then we've got the tier 2, and the tier 2, they're delivered by fitness professionals like myself, personal trainers, and we did design the programs to improve and maintain the general health, fitness and strength of people who you might have a chronic condition, but it's stable and very well controlled. And the accredited tier 2 providers are COTA ACT, we've got them in Hughes, Alive Health Clubs in Narrabundah, LDK Greenway Views in Tuggeranong, the Henry in Higgins, and Capital Rehab Professionals, and they're in Phillip. So some of those locations have tier 1 and tier 2 classes. Our instructors are qualified professionals. They're Strength for Life accredited. They are skilled in developing individualised strength programs for older adults, and they have a lot of experience and fabulous personalities. Most of them, I think all of them. I think that's a prerequisite. So just how do you join Strength for Life? You can visit our website. There's under the program section, there'll be information there about Strength for Life. You can contact COTA, talk to your GP, get a referral from your GP, book in an assessment. We do a 1-hour assessment before the session. And if you have any questions about this, pop it into the chat. If we get time to talk about it today, that's great. If not, contact COTA and I'll be happy to help you navigate that, because I can also refer you across to the different providers. And just to leave you with one of the quotes from one of our participants, but I think a lot of them feel this way. They're just feeling stronger physically and emotionally. This is a great way to socially connect with people, but really get some good physical benefits. So thank you. I've gone through it pretty quickly, and I've also gone over time a tiny little bit. But as I said, if you've got any questions, just pop them in the chat. And now let's move on. We've got a great presentation from Robin Smith from the Heart Foundation. Take it away, Robin.
Thanks, Di. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for having me today. As Di sort of spoke a little bit about earlier, I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about good behaviours for good or better heart health, and also talk to you a bit about the walking program that we have at the Heart Foundation. I had kind of hoped that you might be willing to pop your microphones on and see if we can touch on a few of the things that basically there's 10 steps that I'm going to tell you to help protect your heart. And I was wondering if people can maybe, put their microphones on and tell me, or pop it in the chat, what you think some of those steps might be. Like if I said one of the steps was to be smoke-free, I wonder if you guys might be willing to put your hand up or have a crack at another one of them. Di, you're not allowed to answer these.
Limit your alcohol?
Yeah, beautiful. Excellent.
Exercise.
Spot on.
Diet.
Yep. And we'll be talking about that next week, which will be great.
That's it for me.
All right. So these are the ones, someone in the chat, eat lots of fresh fruit and veg. Yeah, beautiful. Great answers. So this is just, it's a little infographic. I love it because it just has everything. So obviously, as Di has alluded to, we want everyone to be moving more. So, even if you're not doing very much, just a little bit more is what we're hoping that people will do. Obviously being smoke-free is really important, and, so important for your health on many levels. Maintaining a healthy weight. And sorry, I can't remember who said it, but yeah, drinking as less alcohol as you can, reducing your stress, and really importantly, knowing your numbers. So knowing those cholesterol, your blood pressure, and managing your blood sugar, and knowing what's right for you. And obviously, very importantly, if you're over 45, which I assume maybe one or two of you might be, based on this is a COTA event, pop into your GP and have a heart health check. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in next week's webinar if you're joining us again next week. So,
sorry, I thought the webinars were the same thing on the second week, so I'll go back and book in the second one.
No, we're covering a few different things next week. Yeah, going into nutrition and not asthma. Di, you're covering a couple of different things next week, aren't you? As well?
Yeah, next week is exciting on my side because it's around falls prevention and a new program that we have called Strong Women for Life. So you have to come back.
Yes. And so we've got those behaviours there, and what I'm going to talk about now is just a few of the risk factors for heart disease. And we know obviously there are some things that we can control and others that we can't, and obviously things like your age, your family history, your gender, we can't control that stuff, but there's a bunch of things we can control. So just as on the last slide, these are the things that we want you to be trying to be proactively manage so that it's better heart health. And I think the only one that was on there that we mentioned before was the depression and isolation risk factor. So I'll talk about that on the next slide, I think, actually. So obviously Di talked a little bit about it earlier, looking after your mental health, particularly after it's been such a challenging and isolating time over, the last, nearly 2 years, but let's call it 18 months and be generous. So obviously being physically active and exercise is being regularly, we know that that's really good for your mental health. I know I definitely never go out for a walk and come home and think, geez, I wish I didn't do that. I always think that was really good. And in particular, if you've had, you know, a heart event or you've got some worries, you want to be attending a cardiac rehab program where you can potentially connect with other people that have experienced the same thing and really, you know, talk to those people and experience that together. Speaking to your doctor is obviously really important if you're having, you know, you're thinking maybe I do need to reach out, maybe I'm not feeling so great mentally. Reaching out to your family and friends and talking to a professional is really important. And I've put a website on there, which will obviously send you out these slides after the presentation. But yeah, if you want some more information, you can have a little look there. And so I want to talk to you about Heart Foundation walking. I'm wondering, I just initially want to ask people if you're happy to chime in again. Has anyone heard of our walking program or, you know, attended one of our walking groups?
Yep.
Yeah, great. Patricia, which one do you attend, or have you been?
I don't go to them regularly, but I used to go to the Floriade one. They used to have.
Great.
Yeah, they were fun.
Yeah, Meg and I have run them a couple of years, and yeah, this year we were really disappointed. We're all ready for it, and then when COVID kicked off again, it was like, oh no, that's yeah, and poor Floriade. Yeah, they're always good. It's always a really good vibe in there. Sorry. So, you know, these, I guess, Di sort of spoke about this a little bit earlier, all the great benefits of, you know, physical activity and exercise, and why walking? Why choose walking as an activity? I guess with most exercise, it does reduce your risk of heart disease and stroke by a whole bunch, you know, 30%, which is amazing. It helps you to manage your weight and blood pressure and cholesterol. Reduces your risk of developing some cancers, obviously really important as you age. It improves your strength and balance. You get to maintain that bone density, which is again really important as you get older. Helps you sleep better. Boy, do my kids sleep better after I've taken them for a ride. I'm sure you guys might have seen that in your grandkids and your own kids. And obviously it helps you reduce stress and you feel more alert and you just feel better. Like I said before, always come back from a walk, I'm feeling like a bit like I'm a different person. And also there's obviously non-health kind of benefits of walking in that, you know, if you're commuting places or you're, you know, not getting in the car, you're making sure that you're not contributing to the congestion and the air pollution, and you're kind of creating a bit more of a social kind of connection with your community, and the safety aspect of it. The more people that are out there walking, the more people that are going to do it and feel safe to do it. And I encourage you all, I know a couple of people wrote about the safety concerns they had with paths and potentially cyclists. I know in Canberra we've got that really great Fix My Street portal, and if you do see an issue in your local area, please log on to that portal and just take a photo of it, or just notify them of what's going on so that they can fix it, because at times they're quite good. Other times, you know, it's a bit touch and go, but I've had some really good responses to some things that I put in there. So Heart Foundation walking groups, we launched, you know, many years ago up in Queensland. It initially started, and then, you know, within some sort of 10 years, it had grown to be a national program. And now, you know, it's obviously the biggest free walking program in Australia. You know, I went to one of the local walking groups in Curtin. This was a few years ago when I first started the Heart Foundation. And you can see that people join the program initially for the walking, I think, and the physical activity, but then they, you know, continue on in the program for the social side of it, the camaraderie, you know, the team kind of building that comes from joining a walking group. And, you know, they just happen to get some physical activity while they're doing that, which is really great. And obviously it does make physical activity easier and nicer when you're kind of doing it with someone else. Meg and I are in the Heart Foundation office together, and she's on here manning the chat for us today, and we often go out and go running and walking when we can, and it definitely is much nicer to do it together than by yourself. However, I do appreciate some people like to exercise alone. So in Canberra, we have just over 30 groups, which is pretty amazing. And all you have to do is log on to the walking website and pop in a postcode or a suburb. And what that will do is spit you out a list of potential walking groups that you might be able to join. So yeah, it'll tell you where they start, you know, generally the timing, how quickly they go, how far they walk, you know, all that different information that you need, whether it's dog friendly, whether it's pram friendly, whether it's wheelchair friendly. So you can generally find a group to suit what you want to do somewhere in Canberra. And they're run by amazing volunteers. A lot of them themselves have started out in walking groups and then decided to lead their own group, or they've had heart events and you know, joined the group to try and get support from, you know, like people. We also have a walker recognition scheme, so you get, well, I think it's like certificates and money off if you know, once you notch up a few walks in your group. So 36,000 walkers across the country, so that's a whole bunch of people getting their physical activity, which is great. A lot of them are over, you know, 60 years old. Majority are female, which is interesting. They must love to get out and have a walk and a chat. 30% of people live alone, which is, you know, it's really important because, you know, those groups get these people, you know, people that aren't living with other people out and together to mix socially, which is great. Yeah, as I said before, people join for the health reasons, but they stay for the social reasons. So, and I do just want to acknowledge that walking groups are not for everyone. You know, some people, my partner, he definitely does not like going for runs and walks with me. He'd much rather go by himself. I'm only mildly insulted by that. But there's lots of reasons that people might not want to walk in a group, and that's fine. The other thing that the Heart Foundation has recently released are personalised walking plans. So basically you sign up and it's a 6 week journey. It gives you a little plan and you're supported by kind of text messages and weekly emails to check in and see how you're going and potentially move you up into the next level of your plan. And there's the website there that you can go to, fill out a bit of information, and obviously they do a bit of health screening to make sure that you're okay to be able to, you know, join a program like this, and then kind of away you go. So I think, kind of as Di alluded to earlier, you know, any exercise is better than nothing. And I know a few people sort of said, oh, I'm lacking the motivation a little bit to, you know, get up and do stuff. And I always think about, you know, focusing, particularly in these days in COVID, you know, focus on what you can do, you know, rather than, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. Focus on the things you can do and just take that one simple next step that's going to potentially make you feel better, you know, this afternoon or tomorrow. That's how I like to think of it. So I think I'm going to hand over to Janine now to talk a little bit about asthma. So thank you for listening. And I noticed there's a few questions in the chat. So yeah, we'll cover them in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. I'll just introduce Janine, my friend from Asthma Australia. Janine is the Health Projects and Partnerships Coordinator at Asthma Australia and is also an asthma educator and nurse. So I think you're going to get some really interesting and important information from her around asthma, especially spring asthma. So take it away.
Thank you. Thanks, Diane, and thanks, Robin. That was really great just to get an overview of what's happening with all those walking groups. So I guess if everyone's out there walking, particularly at this time of the year and particularly with Floriade, you might notice that there's some other things happening in the air at this time of the year. So I guess, you know, spring means many things to lots of people. Beautiful longer days, being outside with our amazing plants and admiring our wildlife, and also a bit of spring cleaning happens at home. We've got those longer days and a time for things to dry outside. But for some people, having the access to outdoors and doing those sort of activities can bring a whole lot of unwanted problems as well. So things such as having a bit of a runny nose and having some, you know, breathing issues, or there also is the thunderstorms, there's the pollens, there's hay fever. And then on top of that, in our current climate, we have COVID. We have a pandemic happening. And every time you walk into a health centre and it says, have you had a cough? Have you had a runny nose? You can see there's an overlap of the symptoms of hay fever and COVID. So we thought it might be a really good idea for, first of all, let's bring some awareness about the symptoms and what sort of breathing issues you might be having when you are maybe participating in some activity or exercise, and exploring whether, is it asthma? And also getting a bit of an understanding of, well, what is asthma and how can we try and, first of all, identify it, and what other things we can do to manage it or prevent it. So if I could have the next slide, please. Fabulous. So is it asthma? I guess I thought I would start with a very simple explanation of what asthma is, because I think sometimes we're told that we have asthma, but we're never really clear about what it is. We know that we have some puffers and that we have the symptoms and they come and go, and we use our puffers when we have them. I thought by showing you my handy airway model, which you might be able to see there, when we've got our nice open airways, which are in our lungs, our airways are nice and open. I often talk to callers on the phone about having a drinking straw. So the walls of the drinking straw are nice and thin, but around the drinking straw, we have a band of muscle, which is around the outside. Now, for people with asthma, they have really sensitive airways, and that's on the inside of the airways, on the inside there, the airways. And so when those airways are exposed to something that they don't like, whether that be pollens, or whether that's a change in temperature, or whether that's a perfume, or it could be when you get a cold or you start exercising, there are changes that occur in your airways. And this is where I bring out my other model. So one of the main things that you can see here is that this band of muscle tightens on the outside of the airway. It pulls tight on the outside of the airways and constricts the airways so that it's sort of like bunching it in. And often, again, I talk about having a drinking straw with a rubber band pulled tight around it. So when we take our puffers known as Ventolin, or our reliever puffers, they're the medicines that actually help to relax these muscles. They work really quickly within about 4 minutes, and they last for about 4 hours. But what a lot of people don't realize is that there's also changes that occur on the inside of the airways. And this is where I use the idea that if you've got a splinter in your skin will get sore, it'll get red and inflamed and swollen, and it'll also start producing like a fluid because it's reacting to a foreign body in your skin. And the same thing happens in our airways. So the airway lining becomes red and inflamed. The walls become thicker, so there's less space for you to get air in and out through your airway. And also we start producing more mucus or snot. Basically, we're trying to protect our body from this thing that's coming in that's aggravating our airways. So those changes can also cause other issues. So that difficulty with breathing, because there's less air that's able to get in and out of your lungs. So you can start feeling puffed, you can start feeling short of breath. You might develop a cough because you've got all this mucus or snot on the inside of your airways and your body's trying to get rid of it. You get that chest tightness, and again, you've got that muscle squeezing on the outside. And some people, you can hear it in their voice, they sound tight. And so it's that tightness of their chest and that tightness, not enough air coming out through their voice box. And then there's the most common one that a lot of people say, you have to have a wheeze. Now, not everybody has a wheeze with asthma. The wheeze is often caused by this narrowing of the airways and the mucus, but not everybody has a wheeze. So they're the main symptoms that you get when you have asthma. And some of you, well, 1 in 9 people in Australia have asthma. I wonder if anybody would be able to share with us whether they have had any symptoms of asthma in our audience today. Is there a resounding no?
I'm Patricia.
Yes,
And,
Patricia.
I had an asthma attack many years ago now. They weren't able to work out what caused it. I was on a horse and it bolted.
Oh,
So it could have been sheer unadulterated terror. It also could have been something we were riding the horses through. But
Yes.
I went home. Thankfully, I was staying with a group of people, but I just progressively got more and more difficult to breathe. And I ended up in hospital with breathing stuff on my face. And it was really sort of, you felt like you weren't in your own body.
Wow.
But yeah, it was just so difficult to breathe. And
It's very scary.
how are you feeling? And you can't talk because you can't
Yes.
begin to breathe. So, you know, you just sort of kept shaking your head and people didn't know what was going on. But I think that's one thing that maybe is not, people don't understand enough. If you are having a full-blown asthma attack, you can't actually speak. Well,
Absolutely. Absolutely, Patricia. And that's a really good point. And it's one of the big sort of red flag warning signs that if you're unable to speak, if you're unable to speak in sentences, you should be calling 000. And again, I know there becomes that whole understanding of, well, if I can't talk and I'm calling 000, but if you are in that situation, they will send emergency services out to you if you can't speak. If they realise they still have you on the line, they will investigate. So don't worry about that. But the idea is that we want you to recognise your symptoms before you get to that point where you can't speak. We want you to be going, I am needing my reliever medicine less than every 3 hours. I am having a flare up. I either need to call my GP, get someone to take me to my GP, or I need to call an ambulance. So you need to be able to recognise your symptoms. Now, for some people,
sorry, I actually I hadn't had asthma beforehand and I've not had it since.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And that's not unusual to hear, Patricia. I guess it's one of those things, it's good for you to know that you have a history of it. And therefore, it's really important that you talk to your GP about that to make sure that they have an understanding of where your asthma management is, whether you need to have further lung function testing, and whether you should always have a reliever on hand at home and when you go out. So they're the sort of things to keep in mind. Where we're coming from with this is that also people sometimes experience symptoms of asthma, but they just go, oh, you know, I'm just having a bit of a breathing issue today and, you know, it'll be fine, or I'm getting older, or, you know, I think it's about recognizing, actually, is this something more? And I figured that if you knew a little bit more about asthma, then you may be able to recognize those symptoms and therefore do a little bit more research and maybe have a chat to your GP or your pharmacist even about your breathing. I've got some little videos down the bottom. They aren't going to work today, but they're the sort of videos that we do have available on our website, which are really nice and easy to understand. So if you did want some more information, just to jump onto our website. If I could get the next video, please, or the next slide, please. So in springtime, it's really important that we recognise what our triggers are. And then second step, we're looking at our management and prevention of those triggers. So what affects your breathing this in the spring season? Increased pollen, different weather patterns, your increased activity, and then spring cleaning around the house and being in the garden. And as I said, it's really unfortunate that many of the symptoms of asthma are also present in the COVID-19 checklists. So when it comes to asthma and COVID-19 and hay fever, it's good to know what the different symptoms are. Again, just as a public health announcement, if you do have any of the symptoms, make sure you are tested, and particularly any young ones in the family. So recognising the symptoms. What are your triggers? And if activity is one of them, we know that often it's one of the first things to show up, and it's one of the last things to resolve when you have asthma. With allergies, we know that about 80% of people that have asthma also have allergies. So it's really important that if you do have allergies, that whether you can get them further investigated and manage your allergies, and that will hopefully then improve any asthma symptoms that you're having. Being aware of what's in your garden and what sort of plants that you have. So we've got some really great resources again on our website about what sort of plants rely on airborne pollen, and, you know, making those choices when you're redoing your garden to not put those sort of plants or trees in that may flare up your asthma. Then there's, of course, thunderstorm asthma. I'll talk about a little bit more about that in further on in the slides. And we might just go on to the next one, which is more about hay fever. So many people make the mistake of their symptoms of allergic rhinitis, and they think, oh, I've just got hay fever, but it actually could be masking their asthma, and it can be vice versa as well. So I've put a really big list of symptoms on here, and it's amazing that, you know, the red symptoms there, the blocked congested nose, a runny nose with no other symptoms, you can't smell, or you're having itchy and sore eyes. They're our main hay fever symptoms that we get. But all the other ones are also very common hay fever symptoms. So headaches, disturbed sleep, that daytime tiredness and poor concentration, then snoring, having a sore throat and having a hoarse voice, mouth breathing and breathing problems, or coughing and throat clearing, so that postnasal drip. So this is where it's really important, if you do have any of those symptoms, have a chat with your pharmacist or your GP. Managing your hay fever can really make a huge difference to your ability to, number one, manage any asthma, but also number two, enjoy any activity or exercise that you do want to do. So something like having an antihistamine, a daily antihistamine, can be really helpful for you. And particularly if you have a diagnosed asthma and it's not well controlled, having something like a daily nasal spray, a steroid nasal spray, can be really important. So if you do recognize yourself as having any of those symptoms and it's impacting on your ability to to do exercise or get out there and do whatever activity you want to do, have a chat to your pharmacist, have a chat to your GP. A lot of the hay fever medications are sold over the counter, and your GP can also prescribe some that might be appropriate for you. So that's our hay fever. And then on to our activity and exercise. Now, I think, Diane, we've discussed this before, where we've had people who have mentioned to you that, oh, you know, I'm just a bit unfit, or I'm just getting a bit old and I'm just not able to exercise as well as I used to. And I think we've found out that actually there's a little bit more to it, and it actually might be asthma. So I think it's really important that if you do have any of those symptoms with activity, any shortness of breath, wheeze, chest tightness, cough, and again, it sometimes can occur up to a day after activity, to explore that further with your GP or your pharmacist. Also looking at, if you do know you do have asthma, looking at the timing of your activity. So knowing what your triggers are. So for example, when the cold Canberra winters, that sometimes we can't go out for our early morning walk because the cold triggers our asthma. Now, wearing a scarf around our face and humidifying and warming the air before we go out for a walk can sometimes work, but sometimes it's a matter of saying, okay, I won't be going out for a walk at the 7 o'clock that I normally do. I'm going to have to change things around and do it at 10 o'clock when I know it's a bit warmer and hopefully the fog has lifted. So looking at that, then there's prevention. We know that using your reliever puffer, for example, before you exercise, using it for about 10-15 minutes beforehand, and then having a gentle warm up before you actually start your exercise, can really help prevent you from having those symptoms during your exercise or after your exercise. And then also there's the idea of consulting someone like an exercise physiologist, who might be able to give you some ideas about, well, what sort of exercise is going to work best for you, for your condition, and how can we work that in to your lifestyle. So, the other one, which I know that Robin touched on briefly, was just about smoking. And it's just also that, of course, it would be remiss of me not to say that giving up smoking would be also a really good way to reduce your triggers for your asthma and your exercise. And then my last one is just about thunderstorm asthma. So at this time of the year, And I don't know if you can remember last year, we had 5 public health alerts around thunderstorm asthma. So it's basically a unique set of atmospheric conditions where the ryegrass pollen, usually ryegrass pollen, is swept up into the atmosphere. And then while it's up there, it is swept further afield, but it's also broken into much smaller particles, so that it means that for people who have allergies to ryegrass pollen, instead of that usual amount of pollen that they may inhale, they're getting maybe 100 times the normal amount that they're getting, because the particles are being broken down to so much smaller particles. So back in 2016, we did have the thunderstorm event in Melbourne, where we did have many deaths from that event. And so our message to people is that if you do have hay fever, the best way to prevent another catastrophic event like this is to manage your hay fever, to treat your hay fever. If you have asthma, and it is equally as important for you to be using your preventer medication regularly. And I guess that's one thing that I have avoided, or I haven't spoken about during this whole presentation, is the importance of using your prescribed preventer medication regularly. You do need to take it every day. And again, more than happy to have a chat with people after the presentation or through our asthma 1-800 line to have a chat further if you need any further help in regards to how preventers work and what sort of things we could help you with your management of your asthma. So I might leave it there so that there's a bit more time for some questions. I'm not sure if there are questions already. It looks like there might be.
Thanks, Janine. That was fantastic. I just wanted to make one comment regarding asthma. I know that in our work, we find that people with asthma
are less active than the general population. And you can see a lot of it's can have to do with what are the external factors there. If they're wanting to be more physically active, but going outside on a windy day in the spring is going to bring on an asthma flare up, they're less likely to do that. So it's the good asthma management so that you can really get out there and do all the things that you really enjoy. Did you want to take over, Meg, as far as the questions are concerned? Because I know you've been keeping an eye on everything.
Look, there was just one question that's come through. Oh, there's a couple more coming through now. But there was one question that came through for you, Janine, earlier in your session, which was around, I think it was Fiona who was saying that her daughter had been told for many years that she was getting puffed due to fitness. But how do we know the difference between a lack of fitness and asthma without having a test? Is that the only way to kind of tell the difference?
No, well, there are other things, and it's really about getting a really good history from your daughter, and hopefully your GP will do that. So it's really looking at, when does she get symptoms? How do they resolve? Using a puffer is often a very good indicator that she is responding to the medication. And often in children, it's the only way. We can't actually diagnose it because we can't do that formal test. So the response to a treatment is often the way that we can tell that there is that difference between lack of fitness or whether it is an actual condition. So that was a really great question.
There's one more in here as well for you, Janine, which I think might have been from Fiona as well, who says that her daughter is about to start using a preventer, which a respiratory physician prescribed at a sleep clinic. But should she be using a reliever before exercise as well as the preventer?
Yeah, so again, great question. And it really depends on whether exercise does bring on her asthma symptoms. If there's no problem with her, because maybe her preventer is actually doing a really good job and she doesn't need to use her reliever beforehand. So it's really, again, looking at the whole picture and then working out. And then what I'd be hoping is that her respiratory specialist or her GP has provided an asthma action plan, because that will really help her mum or parents to decide, okay, this is what she needs and this is how we need to treat it and manage it. Is it saying here that she does use a Yeah, okay, thank you. All right. You feel free to give me a call afterwards, Fiona.
Fabulous. Is there any questions for Diane or Robin today?
Well, if we don't have any more questions, I just wanted to thank you all for attending, and thanking Robin and Janine again for the great presentations. There was a lot of information there. Just wanted to remind you that we will send out a survey, and it'll probably take about 4 minutes to fill out. So it'd be lovely if you could just give us some feedback. And a reminder for next week. And as we were saying, the sessions next week, we will be doing, I popped it down there. There's Meg will be presenting around healthy eating. And Robin will be talking about heart health checks. Yes. And I'll be talking about falls prevention and our new program. So if there's no more questions, and even if you do come up with anything, please get in contact with us, and I'll be happy to refer you across to the right people.
We have, sorry, Di, to quickly catch you before you finally wrap up. There's one quick question here for you. Is swimming considered a resistance exercise?
Swimming in itself without any accessories is a muscular and cardiovascular endurance exercise. You're repeating that movement over and over again, the repetition. If, for example, you were in an aqua class and you had accessories that made it harder for you to push yourself through the water, so you might be using, for example, like a kickboard and pushing that board forward and back, it's requiring your body to work a little bit harder against that resistance. So there is a resistance component there. The disadvantage of only exercising in the water, though, is that you're not doing any of that impact work that you would do on land, and we need that. We need that to strengthen our bones. So it would be a matter of maybe having a regular swimming routine and then popping in a few land-based resistance exercises. And you know what will happen? It'll be easier for you to swim. You'll swim a bit faster. You'll be less fatigued by the same swim that you do. So it's all good. Hydrotherapy depends on the intensity. Well, hydrotherapy is more around endurance as well, both cardio and muscular. And it really also goes to the intensity again. Sometimes the hydrotherapy sessions can be quite low intensity, and then you can do something that's quite challenging. If you go into deep water and you're doing aqua-based training, that can be very challenging. So there's all those different levels. My daughter's team is working in some TheraBand land work now. Fabulous. TheraBands are great. Now, they're a great piece of equipment. You roll up into a little ball, you can pop them in a bag, you go on holidays, you can take it with you. And there's some great exercises that you can learn from your trainer that once you feel like you've mastered them and you feel they're making a difference, well then when you're not in your exercise session, you can be incorporating that into what you do at home. We have a lot of people that do the classes once a week, but if we know we need to do that little bit more, if you've got that confidence, you can actually build your own little routine to do at home. And we have saved some of our Facebook Live sessions on a YouTube channel called COTA ACT exercise sessions. So that's a really nice introduction into some of the things that we do in the classes as well. So if you would like, I can send you that link. But if you go onto YouTube and just type in COTA ACT exercise sessions, there'll be a few there as well. And look, I'm very passionate about Strength for Life, but there's a lot of other locations out there doing fabulous work. I think what the key is that you want to go to somebody who is qualified, that really understands working with older adults, knows how to progress your program, keep you motivated. And, you know, it is a skill and not everybody has it. So when you go into these places, ask questions, ask about their, you know, their experience and their knowledge around working with older adults and chronic conditions before you decide to go ahead. And we're quite happy to refer you off to those sorts of programs as well. I think the most important thing is that we all find something that keeps us inspired to keep us moving. Yeah.
I think that's
Lovely.
a beautiful way to wrap it up, Di. I love that.
Thank you, Robin. Thanks, Janina. Thanks, everybody. It was such a pleasure. Hope to see you next week. We'll see you, Maureen and Gary, on Thursday.
Thank
So
you,
have
everyone.
a lovely day.
Thank you.